This channel is made possible through the support of generous listeners just like you. If you would like to be a part of helping us bring our message of hope, peace, love, and spiritual truth to the world, please consider heading to experienceofthesoul.com/support, where you can join us as an ongoing patron or simply make a one-time gift. Blessings on the journey, dear friend.
Natural Awakenings Magazine and Unity of Nashville present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 83, Sister Jenna. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello, welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson, and I am the host. We're here in 818 Studios with my producer.
Hello, everybody. This is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey. Hope that the new year is going well. I hope that you're having an amazing 2020 so far.
Yes, we do welcome you into the new year, and we are starting the year off right. We have a very special guest in the studio with us today, and that is the one, the only, Sister Jenna.
Ta-da-ta-da.
Ta-da-ta-da. And we have a couple friends in the studio as well, and glad to have you, Sister Jenna. And Sister was at CCU Orlando a couple months ago, blessing us, and we are so glad that you're here today. I know our listeners are going to want to know more about you and your work and how they can connect in with the great things you're doing. And I'm certainly grateful to have you. And as always, we are very happy to honor you, to acknowledge you on the spiritual journey. And, you know, as always, today is going to be spiritual conversations among friends. And we are ready to do that. And Dave, we got to lift up a country. We got to lift them up. So, have we lifted up India yet?
Maybe, but let's do it again.
It seems like could be the day. We were joking earlier.
Well, India is planning to become plastic-free by 2025, and it's also planning to have all cars that run on gas no longer run on gas. They're going to be electrical cars. I don't know if you really need to lift up India. I think it might be America.
It might be America we need to
my
lift
gosh.
up. Exactly.
I'm just saying. With
Mother
all
Teresa.
of this politicking and campaigning, I don't know. I'm just saying, from D.C., I'm from the hood.
Exactly.
We just might need to wake up America right now.
Exactly. Well, Mother Teresa always used to say that, in India there was financial poverty, but in the U.S. there was a spiritual poverty.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we are working, both of us in our separate ways, but not separate at all, trying to elevate the conversation. But you are very close to the action because of your work in D.C., and I know you have 2 meditation museums there. So tell us a little bit about the work you're doing there and how we can support, because, we have listeners all over the world, and our goal is to really reawaken consciousness to love, acceptance, and peace.
Yeah.
That's what the show's all about.
And you definitely do that, Rev. I think that, I've been investigating for myself personally the countless interviews that I do. And a lot of times we'll share about all the things we've accomplished or things that we do want. But for some reason, because of the studio, the environment that you've created, and just your presence, I'm focused on, what has been my thought process over the past few years that have actually brought me to this place. And I have to say, let's say 30 years ago, when I used to run my nightclubs in South Beach, that had a different thought process. And when I got my download and that light came in, it transformed my interpretation of how I saw myself, not as a physical body, but as a spiritual being.
Mm-hmm.
I started to see myself more from a level of a personality that can serve rather than a personality that could take. So there's been a thought process that's been changing in me for quite some time. And now that I look at myself today, yes, the accomplishments are very grand and they're huge, and I think they're fantastic, and I am humbled by the role that I'm given to play. I think what I'd love for everyone who is listening in or watching in is to recognize what are the patterns of your thinking, what has been the motives in your thoughts, and why we have 2 of the most outstanding meditation museums in Washington, D.C., why we have a very popular podcast called America Meditating, why I direct the Brahma Kumaris in the nation's capital and serve very influential, powerful people, is that I think the thought process that's rooted in my being is, how can I help? If I am for you, then you're with me. And so in what way can I weave in your strengths and my strengths, and how can we make the world a better place? So I just wanted everyone to know that, we get to where we are because of what we've been thinking.
Yes.
I know that's a long-winded answer.
I know. I think that's so beautiful. It's something I've really been working with for quite some time. And I recently took a month away from work. And in that time, I had a reminder that it's so easy to identify with whatever role I'm playing on a very small, myopic personality level. And the small s, self.
Yeah.
Yes, and so like I am a this, I am a that, I am a minister, or I am an engineer, or I am a producer, or even I am a spiritual leader. All of those, have with them limitations. But when we start to break apart those old constructs of identity, then the soul that can come forward
it's huge.
includes all of that, but much, much more. Like including even all of our past lifetimes, we start to have access to so much more and so much more information and so much more of who we really are. And I think the world needs us to break apart those constructs.
We're definitely in an age of expanded process of thinking. I speak to two crowds. I speak to those that are heavily entrenched in the secular and those who are from the tribe of spirituality. And so I would say we are now in an age where we have to think outside of our box. And for the spiritual folks, we have to be genuine enough to speak truth to power, but to live truth to power. Because a lot of us on the path of spirituality, at a head level, we go, I got the answer, but has my heart matched my head yet?
Yes.
Have you seen that? So with the kind of a political division that's going on in the world, and I hope that our show really gets to the middle of America and elsewhere in the world where populist cultures and conversations seem to feel that that's the way to go. You see, when your soul has a variety of like limited ideas, I'm black, I'm white, I'm Jew, I'm Muslim, I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm better than you, I'm less than you. That energy has divided the capacity and the potential of the soul in such a way that you haven't really understood why you're here yet. So I usually offer this very simple meditation practice. What if you were to forget? What if you were to forget everything you saw with your two eyes? Just for a little. And what you immediately begin to experience is expanded thinking and presence. You see that?
Even the body wants to expand.
Did you feel that?
100, almost. It took about
It
5
was
seconds.
instant, exactly. So imagine living from that place of experience when you govern your job, when you cast your vote, when you talk about another person in the office, or you deal with your relationships in your marriages with your kids. If you were to come from that place, do you think would have the division that we're having today? The fighting, the quarreling, the hate?
No.
It wouldn't be there. So you can see your show is so important because when this gets to the right ears and to everyone's ears, we're going to realize we've sold ourselves short by hating, distinguishing who's better than who's worse with one another, and reducing our capacity as to why we're here.
Yes, and one of the great divides, even though we see the split of all kinds in every way you mentioned, in race, in orientation, and one of the greatest divides right now that seems to be prevalent is it seems to be we value people with more money, like somehow that makes them more valuable. Like we, as you said recently in your program with also when we have so many likes and followers, like somehow we're better or more valuable as a human being. when in fact, that has nothing to do, with our values. So it really minimizes who we are almost instantly when we buy into these ideas culture is giving us.
Right.
So it's to really, it does take a conscious choice, I believe. Speaking of our thoughts, a conscious choice to choose new thoughts,
Yeah.
to choose new ways of being.
We need to develop our discerning abilities.
Yes,
And
yes.
you can feel a little bit unloved or unliked if you look at somebody's likes and there's 1 million and you have 10. And what you might forget is that 1 million, they hardly know even 0.5% of those folks, but you know 10 real people.
Yes,
And those 10 real people have your back.
yes.
So we are again in this environment of discerning. I mentioned to you a while back. I had the fortune of being in a video shoot with John Legend, Dionne Warwick, Master P, Louis Gossett Jr. Please, I don't even know half of the names because I'm out of tune. But can I tell you, being in that atmosphere with Ken Cragen, who is the founder of We Are the World, who is now organizing a huge global movement called Hands Across the World, which I want everyone to really become a part of. Listen out for Hands Across the World and listen out for the Love One Another music and song and support it, because it's all about breaking down this separation.
Yes,
And
yes.
really having us come together more. And if we can do that, we would have fulfilled God's desire for our lives being here on the planet.
Yes, and that's for anybody watching us on YouTube. That's what our buttons are about. Are
Well-
the love one another movement.
Well, this love button, I got it from my friend Habib Sagedi, who is the founder of the Global Love Button movement. And I'm very proud to say I'm a global ambassador of love. And along with Chris Martin from Coldplay,
Oh yes,
Stephanie Rule from MSNBC, and a small group of us, we are the love ambassadors around the world. So we go to different places and we continue to remind others that, all the world needs now is just a little bit more love. So when I was asked to join in on the Love One Another video shoot, I go, oh, I'm the perfect person. What is wrong with you all, right? So I said, this is perfect because my complete agenda in this lifetime, Cynthia, is that I want my life to be a life filled with love. And I can see how every second that's tested. But every second I also have a chance to hope that I can fulfill that wish for myself. So it's a wonderful time. Your show is about love and raising awareness and consciousness. And I'm really, really touched that you've asked me to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, I know our listeners are gleaning a lot. I think when we're talking about deeper spiritual ideas, we have to hear them many times in many different ways to begin to really, as you say, connect the head and the heart. And so that's my hope as people hear this show, that they're going to hear you say things a different way and maybe in a more expansive way than I've said or they've heard in the past. And this will help them really put the idea into practice. What I see so much from wonderful, very meaning spiritual people is they say, yeah, well, we love this group, but not them, even though we say, oh, we love everyone.
Yeah.
But as soon as there's an opportunity to split into an us and them, because,
happens.
the ego loves that because then we get to feel better. Somehow we get to feel better about ourselves. So I think the lie of the ego and of general culture is very alluring. And the ego need is so great to know oneself and to feel valued and to feel worthy that I think that's part of the driver of this issue. I think it is. I think it's a big driver of this issue of this us and them. And so it's something we strive to break apart, both in the ministry at CCU Orlando and then in our work here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that if we can move away from the attachment to name, gender, role, title, religion, language, nationality, and the body, think on that for a little. If I'm no longer attached to these things that are driving my life every day, what level of awareness will I come from that space?
Mm-hmm.
And so there won't be a division of because of your sexual orientation or the color of your skin or your
Mm-hmm.
religious belief.
Mm-hmm.
I will meet you from a level of character, like we
Yes.
did at the church.
Mm-hmm.
At CCU, we had everyone turn to each other at the church and say, look at this person as a 6-month-old.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw individuals who were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, goo goo gaga, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we stopped being attached to all these labels that separate us,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why I think that spiritual knowledge and awareness, and if you're not even comfortable with the word spiritual, then put it aside.
Mm-hmm.
How about this? This is why we need to think more from, does my heart feel at peace when I
Yes.
think this about you?
Yes.
Does my heart feel at peace when I yell at you or speak to you in a condescending way? You won't feel that.
No.
And that's your precursor, like to say, I need to change this because I'm here for a higher purpose. I'm here for something good, not something weak.
Yes, and I think the your feelings are such windows into the soul, and what is right for the soul. And I think it's really important to be as conscious as possible of what our feelings are telling us and what messages, how they might be guiding, and also how they might be even making blockages as well.
Yeah.
I think when we looked when we did that exercise of, you're 3 months old, 6 months old, what I saw happen, I saw instant connection, but I saw people that were the way we all do, identify with how we look and feeling cool and looking good. All of a sudden that just kind of melted,
Yeah.
and
Did you see that?
so people could just kind of drop the act of like, oh yeah, there was some like draining away almost instantly of, oh right, I'm not really all this I've made up, and I don't have to have this big wall. And
Yeah.
I'm sure for some people that was a very difficult exercise, and for people that have done a lot of self work, that might not have been as hard. But what I loved about it is everyone who did it.
Had a transformational experience.
Exactly.
And that's what we need. We need to have more experiences where folks can just drop those guards and those masks
Mm-hmm.
and come from the place of the original essence of the being, the soul.
Mm-hmm.
I love that exercise.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
I've done it to a variety of people. So today we've done forget everything you see with your 2 eyes and
Yep.
check how that feel. The second thing we've done is, what if you broke your attachment to name, gender, and all these titles? And the third thing we just talked about, look at a person as if they were just 3-month-old or 6-month-old, and you'll see a big change.
Yeah, I want to talk about detachment a little bit. That's one of the things I'm really working with because I know you're laughing at me and with me, right?
I'm with you, so I'm for you, so
yes,
you're with me.
I know. I have just seen in the last little few months how I can get really attached to an idea, and that really limits the flow of spirit in that particular area of my life. Well, and in every area, because there's this constricting as soon as I've attached.
Yeah.
And there's this, one of the things I had done, and I don't think it was a bad exercise necessarily, but I realized I started getting attached. So a friend of mine said, make a list of people you want to connect with, like for the show, for the church, for my career, whatever, all those things. And so I made this big list, and it was up on my office door. Well, I would look at the list, and I was like, have I talked to them? Have I talked to them? I was really like kind of like taking myself to task. Have I done enough? Have I reached out? Well, then I had a connection that was better than anybody on the list. So then I had to add him to feel better about it. And I said, this is insane. I have set out this intention, and I know Spirit has heard me. I don't need to overly check my order with the universe.
Yeah.
The order's been placed. And I laughed at myself once I went by the list, seeing I added a name. And it's really the name is to just further the message forward and to spread this message to the world. And so it's like seeing that, it's like Spirit really does know better than me who I need to meet. And so I just have to release that.
I get that.
I just have to release that. And I was really attached.
Can I give you a very quick answer?
Yes.
In order to break your attachments, just ask love, what do you want from me?
Yes. Beautiful.
And the answer will come exactly correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So, love, what do you want of me
Mm-hmm.
in this particular scenario and situation? And the first answer would be the right one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, friends, we hope you are breathing with us in that. And if you are driving down the road,
Pull over.
pull over and come back to it. Even spend some time in receptivity. You may not be a meditator yet, but just sitting in silence in a state of receptivity is a wonderful form of meditation. Just being receptive to what comes forward for you. I think all of us are very plugged in. And so just taking time away from the devices, time in silence, will really support you on that journey. So we are going to go ahead and take a short break. When we come back, we will have more conversation with Sister Jenna. Thank you again for joining us.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, Natural Awakenings Magazine of Central Florida, Greater Orlando. Each month, Natural Awakenings magazines across the country take a practical look at the latest natural approaches to nutrition, fitness, creative expression, personal growth, and sustainable living. Natural Awakenings magazine is a free publication and is available in selected stores, health and education centers, healing centers, public libraries, and wherever free publications are located. You could learn more, including advertising opportunities for your business, by calling 407-628-0705. Also, we would like to extend our special thanks to Unity of Nashville, a sister ministry of CCU Orlando. If you're searching for a like-minded church community and a personal connection that supports your heart and mind in the Central Tennessee area, then join Unity of Nashville at 10 a.m. every Sunday at 5125 Franklin Pike. For more information, head over to unityofnashville.org. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey with your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
And welcome back. We are in the studio today with our friend, Sister Jenna.
Thank you very much.
And I want you to tell us a little bit more about your meditation museums. We haven't talked about that at all. And we'll definitely put links in the show notes. But I think you're doing really powerful work there. And I just see those being even more prolific in more cities. I don't know if that's a goal of yours, but I really see that happening. So tell us a little bit about what a meditation museum is.
When I was transferred to Washington from my New York regional headquarters of the Brahma Kumaris, the first year I used to envision that there should be a museum in this city. And I think it was about 10 years later, I had found the property in downtown Silver Spring, which seemed like it would have been ideal, but not knowing what would be the name or how it would structure. Myself and my friend, Madame Harriet Fulbright, I sat with her and I says, what do you think, Harriet? Can we do a meditation museum in Washington? And Harriet, being eloquent and extremely intelligent, basically says, sister, if this works in Washington, D.C., it'll work around the whole world.
Yes.
So Harriet helped me with the narrative, and we set up our first meditation museum in downtown Silver Spring. That was about a little bit over 10 years ago. And they've been a grand success. And so the intention behind it was to have a space in which people can come in and settle their eyes and their energies and their feelings on the artwork, the installations, the narratives, the space, so that their original eternal stories can start to surface in their minds without anyone proselytizing or telling them anything to do. In addition to that, which the space offers, we also conduct over 300 activities and workshops a year at both museums. And I want you to imagine producing 300 shows a year in both museums. And I commend the staff and the individuals who are behind the scenes making that happen, which means they're all getting along. And that's an important tool for me. And so the museum is basically sponsored by the students of the Brahma Kumaris. However, voluntary contributions are requested if anybody would like to offer towards the space, which means the visitors that come can offer a donation, or individuals who consider the work that we do to be very profound. So from being there for young girls who are on the borderline of getting into the system, juvenile delinquents, teaching them self-esteem skills, how to meet people, how to greet, how to talk to people, how to go for job interviews, to serving individuals who are intellectually challenged, who don't really know left from right, up from down, to senior citizens who come in wheelchairs, to political figures and political leaders, to corporate CEOs, to business professionals, to mothers, to children. As you can see, there are no limits to the work. And so we have seen an eradication of suicide, drug abuse, violence against people because of the work that we've been doing. And I think the reason why it's doing so well is that we don't collect a paycheck. Everything that comes goes back to the funding of the programs. That's why we can do 300 programs a year.
Yes, yeah.
So we have that, and I'm touched by the work and the exposure, and I'm humbled by the love of the community.
Yeah, there seems to be a tremendous amount of support, and I just see that growing. But I think there's a real clarity of vision and purpose.
Yes.
You know who you are and what you're here to do. And I think this just reminds me for all of us to be very mindful.
Yes.
I want to go back to your question, what would love have me do? That's a wonderful
To break
question.
the attachments, right?
Yes, because to really move forward, to do the work that you're doing, you had to break many of your attachments and probably continue to. I know when you're a leader, people think that you've arrived, and I know that you must still be doing spiritual work every day, every moment of every day, because we're all, if we're in human form, there's work to be done. There's work to be done. So I want to encourage you, friends, to know that each of us are doing work, and we continue to do it, and we want to encourage you to live from this higher level as well that you are being called to.
I think that if each and every one of us listen deeply, and that means to pay attention to what these thoughts are saying to me and how these thoughts are making me feel, I always have the power of choice. So I will either choose love or I will choose attachment.
Yes.
You ready for me to share about that one now?
Yes.
So love will always look at what's beneficial for all. And attachment says, this is only for me. And it's so simple.
It's absolutely right.
And the moment you practice and apply this ability of bestowing more of yourself to the bigger part of your existence, you start to feel not only the power of freedom that comes from loving, but you begin to feel God's love tapping into your consciousness on a regular basis. So I've never been, fortunately enough, not somebody that tries to propagate how perfect and evolved I am, even though I did in my first 5 years. In my first 5 years, in my spiritual awakening, everybody would just gawk over me, bow down, touch your feet, love you. And if I wasn't blessed by God, I would have continued with that track record of feeling that that's how I think I'm evolving people, is when they do that. So 5 years into my spiritual awakening, I went into my meditation room, which I call Baba's room. And I remembered sitting in that room and saying to Baba, I'm not what they think I am. And Baba kind of whispered to my consciousness and says, listen, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be honest. And that was my freedom.
Freedom.
Then I didn't need to dress properly, to walk like a saint, to talk
Right.
like a saint.
Right.
It gave me the freedom to reveal to humanity that there is a journey towards your sainthood.
Yes. Yes.
And it can take you 50 years, it can take you 5 lifetimes, but please don't deceive yourself with every moment of your life. Be truthful to where you are at that moment and keep putting the best of whatever you think it is. Like, love, what do you want me to do now? And that's going to help you to grow in your spiritual integrity and identity. And that's a blessing that I've had.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think too, it's I've learned in working with people over the years that it's a radical idea to think that you're here to serve something other than yourself, that you're here to serve humanity. And I think when you have some kind of, whether it's an actual spiritual awakening, like a moment, or it happens over time, which I think is for most people, there's some moment of awareness, but then the awakening continues to happen, it seems, and because it deepens and expands. But there comes a time when you realize that your life is not only about you. It is about serving love. It's about serving the collective in whatever way you can. And I think when people will look at you, they'll say, "Oh, well, that's great for Sister Jenna, but she's a sister," or "That's great for a minister, but what do I know? I'm an accountant. I'm an engineer. I don't know. I'm a barber. I cut hair for a living. I don't know how, but in fact, even in that, if we're asking, what would love have me do, or what would love guide me to do, it does awaken something in the soul.
And every person can answer that question.
Every single person, yes. Yeah. Every person can answer that question. You don't have to have a sister or a reverend in front of your name. As a matter of fact, it might be better if you don't, because you will not even have any attachment. You're just living your life and listening for the voice of Spirit. And so I know you believe, and I do too, we all can hear that voice.
I'm never sure if it's a compliment, but a lot of folks have always said to me, "Oh, she makes me so I make them comfortable because of my imperfections." And I'm just never sure
it's like,
if that is a compliment or not. But I've taken it as a compliment because
I believe.
What I do is I don't hide my shortcomings. I invite everyone to recognize, do you know that there's a journey?
Yeah.
Before Jesus was this anointed great messenger of peace, do you even know what he went through before he got to that space, or before we started to believe in his messaging? And so I feel like a lot of us now, if we're really genuine spiritual travelers, we're not going to be ashamed of revealing all that we are with everyone in our lives, so that real-time processing of how we are can inspire folks to say, I can do this too.
Yes.
And I feel that's where we are right now in the game of life.
Yes. Well, and, the name of the show is Authentic Spiritual Journey.
That's what I love about it.
Yes, for that reason, because we do want to bring our whole self. And I remember I think it was probably about 20 years ago when I was listening to a Unity minister. She's made her passing. Her name was Sharon Poindexter. And she said, we have to get to the point where we do love ourselves completely, warts and all, and can be still moving forward with grace, with confidence, knowing there is no perfection. I'm bringing my whole self in, and there's going to be ways that there's going to be times there is no perfect, so I'm not going to do it perfectly, but I can love myself. But that doesn't preclude the need to still work on myself. Yeah. And so I've often heard in spirituality, people say, well, I love myself the way I am. God is good. It's good. Easy does it. It's all good. And that's really not what we're meaning. We're meaning to really honor and acknowledge the journey, but still continue to do the work of the soul, at a very, very deep level.
One of the ways that I'm genuinely showing up for the self is I won't say I love myself. I'll say I've been working towards acquiring that stage.
Yes.
And what that does for my mind and my intellect, what it does for me inside, it keeps me real. And when I'm real, I can be real with you.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of times the head tries to get to the destination or the finish line before the heart's not even out the gate.
No.
and the head has already go, well, come on.
Well,
So
the head's figured out 1, 2,
Yeah,
3, 4,
yeah.
and it's not linear.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that what's happening is, and I would really like to invite everyone listening in or watching in that please begin to have a very honest dialogue with yourself and check that you're not trying to compete with people about who's better, who's worse. If you're 10 steps ahead, it doesn't matter. Everyone's going to, it's like, if you're on a plane, the flight lands and gets to the gate at the same exact time. The only ones that get off first are those in first class, and they had to pay a lot of money for that. And that's just a few people. But there's something, if we're really listening, and I really want to talk to you, I want to speak with you, I want to be with you at this moment, as I invite you to just breathe and pull back a little. And don't get influenced by the way of the world. And just listen to what your thoughts are saying, how they're connected to your truth and to love and to the purity of your existence. And then begin to make small choices, take small steps, whether it's as simple as washing your dish in peace. Your soul will get the experience of what that feels like. And as you build a confidence of really feeling yourself in peace, in love, in purity, in power, when bigger choices come for you to make, you will have the confidence to come from that deeper place of experience. So it's going to feel a little odd at the beginning, but don't worry about it. Just breathe and start to practice with little things that you want to make choices about that are coming from peace or love or purity. A lot of people will tell me, can you help me, Sister Jenna? Tell me what's my purpose. And the answer is just do everything in peace. You'll find your purpose. So a lot of people think purpose is I've got to be the CEO, I've got to do the best singer, I've got to be the best entertainer.
That it's an outward manifestation.
I've got to do it. And I get it. When I was at the John Legend video shoot a while back, I mean, it was clear everybody there had 10, 20, 30 million followers, and I admired them for being able to build that kind of attention towards their energy. And at the same token, I don't want people to be disillusioned by that skill. I want you to be as genuine as possible and let people follow you because that is who you really are. So then you don't have to pretend and be all that stuff. So just listen deeply and have a truthful conversation with yourself. And life will start to become a lot more simpler.
Yes, the thing I keep coming back to is we talked about it, excuse me. We talked about it at the very beginning of the show. We were talking about tapping into the soul and not this concretized personality self. The smaller,
the body awareness
yeah,
self.
the body, not soul. And that's one of the points in my new book, Identify with the Soul and Not the Body. And the body, the temptation, the allure to attach to that is it's so big that I think you're right. It does feel very funny at first, and as we start to listen, and move, it's like we don't lose anything. I think somehow the mind wants to tell us a story that if we really start listening to our heart in a greater way or our soul, that somehow we're going to miss something.
Yeah.
But in fact, we gain so much more. So I feel like I want to, this may be my caretaking. I feel like I'm wanting to encourage our listeners, as they're thinking about this, to just begin to try it, like you say, in very, very small ways. We often talk about it as following our internal guidance or listening to the voice of spirit, but I love the idea of the way you said it. which is how it brings you peace, just this feeling
Yeah.
of peace. Because at our soul level, we all know what those things are. No one else can tell you that.
No,
You
your
know
soul
for you.
knows.
The
Yeah.
soul totally knows.
And the times that we're in, it's 2020, and we are embarking on perhaps the greatest challenge of our lives as Americans, but also as the world
As a
at
soul,
large.
yes.
And my understanding of the soul is that it is a consciousness. Okay, the soul is an energy which resides inside of the body. And if I were to ask where that is, it's behind the eyes. Okay?
Third eye.
And so there are two levels of consciousness that functions in the soul. Either I'm body aware, which is mostly thoughts based on matter, name, gender, role, religion, title,
Right.
or thoughts based on virtues, qualities, or inner power as I play out my body of matter. Pause for a little. So if I'm soul aware, I'll bring virtues, qualities, and powers in my job, my career, my identity. If I'm void of soul awareness or soul consciousness, and I'm so physically driven, and everything about me is about what I'm wearing, who I look, who I'm with, what am I up to, then it's as if I'm stifling the soul from existing.
Yes.
And that energy of limitation is what's creating division, separation, hate, fear, insecurity, anxiety, confusion. And that's why, and it's something I've been investigating, Cynthia, was that as bad as it's all feeling for many of us, how come we don't hear about God a lot? And it's almost as if folks are feeling that, well, look at religion and what religion is doing, and the churches are changing, the synagogues are changing, the mosques are changing, but we are changing.
Yes.
The church isn't changing. What's changing is
And the church is just its people.
we are changing. The
Yeah.
church, the synagogue, the mosque, the temple is a space for us to gather because we feel tribally connected in the way we perceive life, right? And so when you start to realize that the church isn't growing or the mosque isn't growing or the synagogue isn't growing, what's the reason for that? Everyone's on a smartphone. Everyone has their own privacy. Everyone's got a nice car. Everyone's feeling like they're masters of their own little kingdom in the palm with this little gadget in the palm of their hands. And we're losing sight of the human capacity to grow and to share and to really enhance each other. So when I see like we're not bringing the energy of God's purity and peace and love into our churches, into our jobs, into our government, into our country, then what hope does the future have?
Right.
Because for me, God is not Hindu, Christian, Jew, Muslim. God is a vibration of pure experiences. It's pure peace. It's pure love. It's pure truth. And if you were to try to equate what the experience of God would feel like if you tapped deeply into it, it would be like an ocean of love.
Yes.
So that would make us totally speechless. Like, I don't need anything else now. I got it. So if you notice, we are no longer an ocean of love. We're ponds or puddles with the intention to become that again. So I feel like where we are now is we need to turn inwards more, pause. We do this thing in the Brahma Kumaris called traffic control. So every hour on the hour, all 9,000 branches in 120 countries stop for a minute to 3 minutes of silence. And we give peace to the self. We go inwards and consider ourselves to be pure and peaceful souls. And then we evolve into the connection to God, the ocean of love and peace. And then we allow that vibration to spread in the atmosphere just every hour on the hour, even if it's for 60 seconds. Every hour on the hour. And so that practice of even traffic control will help to create global peace. And we have to start to do that.
We have to. I agree. We actually did a practice of that at our church recently, and I'm going to task our listeners with doing that on that very cool phone that you have. You can set a timer on the hour. to do that very thing, to go off as a reminder.
Yeah.
And what happened when I was doing this practice for the first time, I think it was in ministerial school, we learned it as a prayer novena, which is a very Catholic practice, but
Okay.
it's where on the hour you pause, and it's often saying a certain prayer, but I was doing silence. I would do like a minute or 5 minutes
Perfect.
on the hour. And so I encouraged our community to do it last year. But a couple times I was in settings because, I have a very busy life. And I thought, well, I can do it right here in this setting. My eyes can remain open. I can be very mindful. As a matter of fact, this energy needs, this meeting needs this energy right
Yeah.
now. So I want to encourage you to figure out a way to do it, because I could already hear people saying, well, what about when I'm in a meeting? What about this? What about that? We always look for ways to check out of these practices, and I want to encourage you to find a way to make it happen, because
Yeah.
it's so important. We say we want the world to change, but then we do the same old things. So we may have to have new habits and new practices that expand our awareness,
Yes.
of who we are. So thank you so much, Sister Jenna, for joining us. I feel like we could talk all day, but we are at the end of our show. And Dave will let people know, again, on show notes how to find you. But do you want to say, just so everybody can hear, where, if people want to find out more about your work and where you're going to be, where could we do that?
Well, globally, if you want to connect with any of our meditation centers, just go to brahmakumaris.org. And if you'd like to tune into our podcast, it's americameditating.org. And if you're ever in the nation's capital, just come by and visit us at the Meditation Museum and look out for us.
Yes. So thank you again, Sister, for joining us. As always, Dave, it's a pleasure to be in 818
Dave,
Studios.
you're awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're awesome.
And as always, friends, we thank you for listening. We support you on the spiritual journey, and we encourage you to reach out to one another in love, to live your authentic path, moving out of that attachment and moving deeper into peace and living from the soul. So thank you again for joining us. Blessings on the journey, dear friend.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey, presented by Natural Awakenings Magazine and Unity of Nashville. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is also made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, Arlene Meyer, Kathy and Terry, Marcia Mott, Nora Miles, Diana Cox, Leslie Williams, Susanna Garcia, and Shayla Mount. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2020 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.